Growing questions surrounding how Israel is carrying out airstrikes in southern Gaza. This after repeated strikes, the most recent in the city of Rafah, killed at least 50 Palestinians, injuring over 200 more. Officials initially saying the attack was supposed to target significant Hamas terrorists.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now calling the deaths of civilians a tragic mishap. And here to tell us all about it is ABC foreign correspondent Britt Clennett. She is on the ground there in Tel Aviv. Good to see you, my friend.
Hi there, DeMarco. Yeah, so the picture is grim again today. You know, as it reels from that horrific attack, Rafah is under bombardment again today. Reports of civilians, guys, having to flee Western Rafah once again. I spoke to a family just a little earlier who said they've had to move 5 times during this war. Say they don't know where they're going to go next because aid groups say there is no safe place in Gaza. Now, our team on the ground in Gaza sent from the scene footage which really shows the aftermath of the attack. The scorched area, you can see a charred vehicle, burnt belongings, including blankets and clothes.
And Britt, I have to ask you, what are the biggest questions that need to be answered after this most recent strike?
I think a big question is going to be, look, how did a precision strike that the IDF said they were carrying out, how did it turn into this firestorm that we saw that killed and injured dozens of people? You know, the IDF said it targeted 2 senior Hamas officials, and Netanyahu came out to say it was a technical failure and a tragic mishap, raising more and more questions. But we do have newly released information from an IDF official who said that the 2 Hamas officials, militants rather, that were the targets were hiding in a structure. They say the first that broke out, the fire rather, that broke out nearby following the strike. They're still investigating what caused that. They also said that 2 munitions were fired from a fighter jet, and the officials said that the IDF was operating 600 feet away from that safe zone, which is kind of the controversial point as well in all of this.
And Britt, this attack is drawing condemnation from world leaders here. In fact, French President Macron is calling for an immediate ceasefire. What type of impact could this attack have on Israel, especially with their stance on the world stage?
Yeah, you're right, DeMarco. Look, Israel's government is facing unprecedented levels of diplomatic pressure now, as well as the growing pressure here at home to get those hostages back. The UN's human rights chief, he said that the attack suggested that there had been no apparent change in the methods and means of warfare used by Israel that have already led to so many civilian deaths, despite that law by the UN's top court ruled against its Rafah offensive just 2 days before this strike.
And one of the things that was destroyed in this strike was a hospital there in Rafah. What does this mean for those people there on the ground?
Yeah, so what we do know is that this hospital, this Kuwaiti hospital, has now said that it is no longer operational. Now, this is something that we're hearing time and again during this war. They say it's because of Israeli attacks near and around the hospital. But again, you know, this is something that is already the system in Gaza, the healthcare system in Gaza has been brought to its knees. It has been stressed on many different levels. Even without a full-scale Israeli ground invasion into Rafah, its medical facilities were already overwhelmed, struggling to cope with a surge of emergency cases as they suffer a lack of capacity, of staff, equipment. So already medical care in Gaza is strained, and now another hospital saying that they can't operate. It's going to have devastating consequences once again.
And that our region has been bracing for a potential invasion of Rafah by Israel. Is it the possibility that that could happen?
Look, we shouldn't speculate at this point, but certainly what you're hearing is more this growing frustration from the White House. You know, Rafah was always a sticking point, and after this attack, with the images, you know, going across the world of the, as I say, that firestorm, that burning inferno, it's going to create more anger and not just put pressure on Israel, but put pressure on Israel's staunchest ally, the U.S. We heard from Netanyahu saying from the National Security Security Council rather, calling the images devastating, heartbreaking, saying that Israel must do whatever it can to protect civilians. And President Biden himself, we have to remember, he's previously voiced his opposition to Israel's offensive in Rafah. His administration even suspended a shipment of weapons to Israel over concerns about how they might be used. So the White House continues to reiterate, though, that Israel does have the right to defend itself and protect its civilians, but its patience appears to be wearing thinner and thinner, especially now given the repeated warnings against a full-scale attack in Rafah. And of course, what we saw in Rafah at that refugee tent, as I say, will be generating a lot more frustration.
ABC News foreign correspondent Britt Clennett, thank you so much for being with us today.